In the Impact segment tonight, the Senate and the Trump administration. Most cabinet positions require Senate confirmation, but some of Donald Trump's cabinet choices are already facing opposition, and not just from Democrats. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, has said he too might block certain nominees. The senator joins us now from Washington. Welcome, Senator. So you've said that if John Bolton were to be named attempted to be appointed Secretary of State, you would block that, you would filibuster that. And Rudy Giuliani. You tell us why?
Well, I supported Donald Trump, and one of the things I like about Donald Trump was that he said, you know what, we should learn something from the Iraq War. It was a mistake, and regime change is a mistake. It hasn't made us safer. It's emboldened Iran. When we toppled Gaddafi in Libya, didn't make us safer. ISIS grew in Libya. So I think that one of Donald Trump's big messages was Iraq War was a mistake, and regime change hasn't worked in the Middle East. So I don't think he should appoint somebody. I'm just trying to be helpful, Eric. I don't think he should appoint somebody who actually didn't learn any of those lessons. I mean, Bolton is an extremist. He is somebody who believes, and he was asked this within the last few months, was the Iraq War a good thing? He would do it all over again. But he's also for regime change in Iran, and he believes that we can make the world safe for democracy by toppling governments around the world. And that is not something, that's someone who hasn't learned the lessons of the Middle East. So, yeah, I supported Donald Trump. I'm not out here to oppose his picks. I'm hopefully out there to guide and bring the debate to the points where people might agree or disagree, whether or not the Secretary of State should agree with Donald Trump that regime change is a bad idea.
So let's talk about Mitt Romney. His name has been floated as well. He's meeting with Donald Trump tomorrow. Your thoughts on Mitt Romney? I don't think he brings anything any better for what you're looking for as far as Secretary of State.
What I would say is that I would ask the same question. Do you think the Iraq War was a mistake? Have we learned a lesson that regime change is not a good thing? So, for example, one of Donald Trump's first picks today, Mike Flynn, to be National Security Advisor, he has said that the historical lesson we should learn is that it was a strategic failure going into Iraq. I'm comforted by that. I feel hopeful that Mike Flynn will be giving him the advice that a lot of us have come to understand about the Middle East. Romney, I'm not sure. I don't think he's way out there on the extreme edge of the war-making cliff like Bolton or even Giuliani. But, I would want to ask those same questions to Romney as well. Have we learned the lesson that the Iraq War was a mistake?
Well, can we float a name? Who would fit the bill for you as for Secretary of State?
Well, one of the other names that's been floated in the mix has been Senator Corker from Tennessee. He's head of the Foreign Relations Committee, has some significant experience with meeting and knowing some of our foreign leaders. And I think he'd be a more reasonable, rational hand and not really so much a bomb thrower. So you want the head of your State Department not to be the head of the armed forces. This is a person who's head of diplomacy. You want them to be a diplomat. Their job is to try to see how we avoid war, not to create war. Now, you want your Defense Department to be prepared for war. So there are different sort of objectives that you have. But I don't want the Secretary of State to be somebody saying, oh, we need to bomb Iran. We need to bomb Iran yesterday or the day before or the day after. You want the chief diplomat to be saying, these are the things I think we can do to oppose Iran and to let them know we're not going to be a pushover and to stop them from doing what they're doing, but it doesn't involve necessarily invading Iran.
What about, would you want them to actually renegotiate the Iran nuclear deal, whoever that Secretary of State may be? Would that be a requirement? Or are you okay with the Iran nuclear deal staying in place?
I think most people misinterpret the Iran agreement. I was against the agreement because I didn't think it did enough, but it did do some things. It gave a bunch of money to Iran early on, which I disagreed with. That money's already been given. And now Iran is expected to comply with nuclear sanctions, not conventional weapon sanctions, but nuclear sanctions. So far, there hasn't been evidence presented that they have not adhered to the nuclear sanctions. What everybody's complaining about, I still complain about as well, is that they keep sending arms to other proxy groups fighting in wars around the Middle East, and that they keep developing conventional weapons. But that wasn't part of the agreement. So really what you need is a new agreement. Now, whether or not they are a negotiating partner that we can rely on, that's the real question.
Okay. I want to pivot a little bit to some news that affects your state, Kentucky. Ford today has announced that they are not going to move a plant that they had planned to move to Mexico. They're going to keep it, and they called Donald Trump today and said, hey, guess what? because of you, we're going to keep this plant in Kentucky. That's good news for your state.
Absolutely. And I think there are things that could be done with a bully pulpit. And I think we can expect Donald Trump will use the bully pulpit. And I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to say to people that, you know what, just like in our defense, we will negotiate from a position of strength. In our trade, we should negotiate from a position of strength. I don't know who gets all the credit, but I'm more than willing to give Donald Trump some of the credit for keeping forward in Louisville.
And maybe others as well, Senator, especially if people take their cue from Ford. Companies take their cue from Ford, or some of these trade deals, NAFTA, and some of the other trade deals that are so restrictive and drive manufacturing jobs out of the country. If those are broken, maybe we can keep some of these companies.
Yeah, and the other thing we need to do if we want to keep American companies here is one thing we can do to make it better for them, to allow them to compete and so they don't flee our country, reduce the tax burden. We have the highest corporate income tax in the world. We should, at the very beginning of Trump administration, lower the corporate income tax as fast as possible to keep those American companies here.
Yeah, I would guess that was going to be one of his first initiatives, would be 35 to 15% corporate tax, and then allow the repatriation of funds to come back.
Absolutely.
Senator Paul, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Eric.